All right, so in modifying your duotone colors, it just gives you a lot more you can play with and get more depth. And again, you can always just paint right into them as well. I like to use a low opacity though and the soft edge so I can do it very gently. And then you can always play with the individual opacity of the different layers to make it all work. So where he has stubble, I might just deepen it a little bit. Maybe his ears are a little bit sunburned, so I push that a little bit more red. His neck is probably definitely going to be more pink. His lips, I haven't really given any particular color, so maybe I steal a new color for his lips. And I put that in gently in these duotone layers. I'm leaving my flat layers alone. And as I need to get more and more precise, I shrink my brush more and more. If I want to add a little bit more color to his lips, I do it this way and I build it gently. And if it's something really hard to get color in, like often how the eyes are, I might use my color overlay layer. And zoom in and paint the color gently over the top. And the color I paint will automatically match the values underneath. Now the other reason I'm going to use this duotone layer is to soften edges that shouldn't be quite so crisp, like around the muscles of the iris in the eye. And I'm constantly using my color selector to pick these colors and paint them in. Now, when all is said and done, when you take away your blacks and grays, you're going to have this kind of hazy portrait. It's like a painting of what you're coloring. And in your shadows, it will be a little bit more linear. You can be more aggressive in your coloring in your shadows. But in this duotone layer, you want it to feel soft and progressive. I don't need to worry so much about going over the lines because I'm painting at such a low opacity. If I paint some of this 30% pink into the green of the shirt, no big deal. It all kind of works. But I can also use it to fix little mistakes, little areas that didn't get filled in completely. So we start with hard edge and 100% opacity, and we end touching everything up with very soft edge, low opacity. And even mistakes we made in our flat color layers, we can fix on the duotone layers. Now don't forget, this is a photo class, and we've learned other techniques as well to alter and modify exposures. And so we could use those. We don't just have to paint. We can also use dodge and burn. We can also use the sponge tool to saturate or desaturate. So if I think those eyes are just too saturated, I could use the sponge, set it on desaturate, and just hit them a few times. Take the colors in that layer down. And you can just keep building and building, getting it where you want. So by using this soft edge, I can kind of get some of the wispiness of the hair color in there and blend it into the background and blend the background color into the hair. And so it looks much softer like this rather than just a solid block. Remember, if I ever want a highlight to show up, I just erase from that duotone shadow layer, and the highlight layer should come through. But sometimes that's not enough variation, so sometimes I'll even paint with a different color. Like into the highlights on this cap, maybe I'll put some of those pinks and oranges just to help break it up. Now, you can't work miracles with your coloring. I can't make this guitar into this guitar just because I want to. But I can give it little hints of the color. In these subtle ways. But I want to make sure it's consistent and believable. And you want to use kind of what we've learned from lighting. You're going to see the most texture and the most saturation in the midtones, where the shadows break into the lights. And then things are very seldom just one color. So these pants, which are mostly this blue that I've picked, I can now mix some soft shadows of kind of the purplish pinks into them with the shadow of the guitar. Bring them together that way. And any edges that don't line up can be made to kind of line up with a bit more sensitivity with these smaller brushes. So my goal is to finish this up and then show you how to submit it. It's very simple. You're just going to submit the black and white version or whatever your scanned version is, even if it's kind of all yellow or all sepia and you had to first take color out of it before adding color back in. And then your colorized version. And our main goal is that our colorized version is more visually engaging, gives us more to enjoy looking at in whatever way, whether it's through realism or through something else, than just the black and white alone. So a lot of times this happens in coloring. I don't know what certain things are. I don't know if that's a guitar strap or sheet music or what, but I just kind of soften around it and it shouldn't draw too much attention. There's also lots of times when you just didn't quite fill in everything you needed to. I have a blue fingernail there. You don't want to have any blank white spaces, so you use the low opacity soft edged brush to fix all of that. Now what if I just want to make it darker? I could use the burn tool, and I can deepen some of these colors, some of these areas, especially if I think it's kind of a bad exposure in certain places. You just want to not overdo it. It's easy to overdo. You can hit your shadows with the burn tool a little bit, especially shadows that you want to kind of hide certain areas. And it'll do a lot of your work for you. And if you ever go too far, there's always the eraser. All right, so what about some last minute coloring? What if I want to do the hardware on the door? It's no problem. I just pick a color. I just paint it in softly with this low opacity duotone. I don't let it draw too much attention, because I've done all the areas I really want people to look at closely. And then you save your work as you go. My computer's been pretty good. It's being a little strange right now. Whenever it starts to feel sluggish, save it. And then just work on refining it until you're sick of it. The biggest mistake is to only work on areas that you're interested in, instead of looking at all these little spots that will catch the eye if you were to print this and give it as a gift. So the answer isn't to be really detail oriented so much as to address all of the image all of the time. So hitting Command O, seeing the whole image, working on different areas, not always just being zoomed in and looking at specifics. That's going to help you get a better result. Remember that dodge and burn have unintended consequences sometimes. They can often oversaturate your colors, and that's why you have the sponge tool as well as a modifier. Too much green in it overall, so I'm going to make this guitar strap or whatever it is a little